Good evening. Tonight we begin our Right of Way series, a close look at how drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians share our roadways. We've got a full week of special reports from every perspective. But first, here's what's happening in the news. One of three men accused of impeding the investigation into the marathon bombings is now free on bail. Robo Philippos is charged with lying to investigators and has agreed to post a $100,000 bond and home confinement as he awaits trial. Also today, arrangements are being made to bury the body of bombing suspect Tamerlan Tsarnaev. But so far, no Massachusetts cemetery has agreed to accept the body. And now our feature story. This is National Bike Month, something we've been anticipating for many months. WGBH News, along with our partners at Wicked Local, are taking a close look at all week at how bicycles, cars, and pedestrians share our roads. Tonight, our Right of Way series kicks off with a drive around the city of Boston. I'm the driver, and I'm looking for bicyclists. It was an unusually warm early April morning. We strapped a tiny camera to our windshield and set out to find bikers. We found them all. The weavers, the traffic obeyers, the daredevils, the cautious, the helmeted, the helmetless, the clued in and the clueless. And we got a first-hand taste of what it's like for those on two wheels versus four. There's a bike sign right in the middle. I mean, it's crazy. Parked cars, us, buses, bike lane. Our WGBH News survey of 500 Massachusetts residents tells us people think bike lanes will make biking safer. 45% of respondents believe bike lanes will help prevent accidents. But as you can see, just marking city roads won't do it. Well, you know the old saying, no two things can occupy the same space. Well, here on Huntington Avenue, what about four things occupying the same space? You've got your parked car lane, you've got your car lane, you've got your trolley lane, and then you have your bicycle lane. Tell me how that works. And speaking of safety, right now, I wouldn't want to trade where I'm sitting for the seats I'm brushing by.
Does it make you nervous driving alongside them?
Yes, I get nervous. Absolutely, because I'm not sure what they're going to do, and I can tell that they're wondering what I'm going to do. Of course, I feel like telling them what I'm doing, but you can't really. As for who's more responsible for accidents, bikes or cars, our survey calls it a tie. Drivers and bicyclists are deemed to be equally liable. Brendan Longy commutes from the south end to Copley and agrees it's a two-way street.
I think everyone in every category, pedestrians, cars, bikes, everyone, there's a whole range of people, and who you're dealing with on any given day is like a total mixed bag and grab bag. You could have a very good cyclist one day, and you could have someone the next day, some people who are brand new to the sport. Same with cars.
However, Longy says, since drivers have the advantage, they need to let cyclists know their intentions.
I'm always checking the back of cars for their blinkers and stuff, especially, knowing where people turn and stuff. The blinker is super useful, and I wish it would be more widely used. A lot of bikes on the sidewalks, so obviously a lot of these kids are getting around on bikes.
And that's the other thing. Cyclists carry a ton of stuff. Backpacks loaded with everything from school materials to sports gear to guitars strapped on their backs. She's carrying quite a load. She was going to run that night, though. I can see why it's tempting to do that, because you have your balance and you don't want to stop. Another thing that strikes me, cyclists are really fast. You realize how quickly you can get around on a bike, though, because here's our guy again, and he's definitely keeping pace with us. Oh, and one last thing I couldn't help but notice. No helmet on him. No helmet there either. I'm surprised how few people have on helmets. It's about 50-50. I would have thought it would have been more like 90-10 wearing helmets. Here's your 50-50 right here. Brendan Longy can explain. So I noticed you're not wearing a helmet today.
Yeah.
You do sometimes. How come not today?
I think I was just excited for the nice weather. Yeah. Usually...
What would that have to do with anything? Honest to God. Why wouldn't you just put the helmet on? Is it more fun to ride without a...
Yeah, I guess you could say that. It feels nice. There's really no, I think, reasonable, rational explanation.
Now that I can understand. Okay, joining me here now are Laura Smeaton, a bike safety expert, David Riley from Wicked Local, our partners in the Right of Way series, and Steve Casella of the Mass Inc. polling group. Welcome to everybody. So I'm going to take an assumption that everybody here has at one time been both a biker and a driver. So you kind of see it. So I had this perception, and maybe I'm wrong because I was so sensitive and hyped up about doing this, but people are much more aware than they used to be about cyclists on the roads. Do you think that's true, Laura?
I would agree, and I think that has to do with there are more cyclists out there. And a number of studies have shown that that in and of itself can be a safety issue. As there are more cyclists, people do become more aware, and that's everyone, pedestrians, car drivers, and bicyclists themselves.
Mm-hmm. I was interested in Steve's poll, and I know you've been working on this project too about this whole bike lane thing. I mean, I wasn't even really that aware of the bike lanes, and I still started really looking at them over the past couple of weeks. But I mean, the notion that the bike lane is going to be somehow the be-all, end-all to solving infrastructure and getting more people off on bikes, because I know the city of Boston, or actually the state, is hoping 30% more cyclists are going to take to the roads by 2030. Is that going to be the solution?
Well, a lot of bike advocates and transportation planners think that that's the case, and there's sort of a wide range of transportation, of infrastructure options. There are bike lanes that are separate from car lanes. There's also the kind of thing
the inner ones that are separate. Yeah.
Right. There's cycle tracks, which are totally separate. There are markings in the lane that are called sharrows that are just sort of there to remind drivers that bikes might be here. Keep an eye out. So it depends very heavily on where you are. Not everywhere needs a bike lane. Not the same solution will work in every place. But folks think there's an important part for infrastructure to play in making cycling seem more safe and accessible to more people.
So, Steve, I guess I was surprised by the poll in that I thought it would be more polarizing, that people would be pointing fingers at drivers as being, the ones who are more, kind of laissez-faire. They don't notice the bicycles as much, but really people had a pretty even view of that both are responsible.
They did. I mean, there was about an equal number that said bikes, equal number said drivers, but as you said, most actually said both were responsible. And that pretty much extended across demographic groups. There was a little bit of variation here and there.
There was a political breakdown.
There is a political breakdown.
Democrats blamed drivers and Republicans blamed bikers.
I mean,
that's great.
It seems like on almost any issue these days, there's something like that. And it also actually it extended to what people thought should be done. Democrats are more likely to favor bike lanes. Republicans are more likely to favor new laws, actually, and enforcement of existing laws. When you combine those with Republicans, it was more than half. So there is, even in the realm of what people think should be done about it, there's that political divide.
And again, bike lanes was the #1 answer given, 45%, on the issue of what would make the roads safer.
Right. The problem there is that when you pose bike lanes against all the other things we need to do on infrastructure, it's at the bottom. So it's at the top of what people think should be done about bike safety and bike and driver interaction, but when you pose it against the T and all the other things, highways and congestion and potholes and so forth and so on, it's at the bottom. So that's another political problem, actually.
We're going to be talking about this more in the next couple of days and even in the next segment, but all the different types of bikers that are out there, from the very serious to the casual commuter to the just jump on a hubway kind of thing. But Laura, you had an incident, an accident or a near accident that kind of got you thinking about more, safer ways to bike. When you're dealing with such a broad range of people, how do you get that word out there when some people are very focused on that and other people, people going the wrong way down a busy street and kind of pushing along with their feet, and you saw all kinds of things.
Right. I think, again, numbers and awareness, I think, is the #1. So I think any reductions in distracted transport is really one of the most important. That includes all modes of transport. I see pedestrians with headphones on, looking down, cyclists texting, drivers texting. That really puts everyone at peril.
Well, what are some of the things that you tell people? How do you... What's a lesson in safety and bicycling?
Well, one of the things I teach people is that sometimes, well, first of all, just giving them the skills, the knowledge and awareness to how to keep themselves safe on the road. Some of the things that make people think they're more safe actually makes them less safe. The easiest example for that is sticking too far to the right of the road, or what I call hugging the curb. If you come up to an intersection where you might want to make a right turn or go straight, if you're trying to stay out of traffic and you're actually hugging the right, but you intend to go straight through the intersection, you're doing exactly what you were saying in the segment earlier we just watched, where people don't know what you're going to do because they expect you to turn right if you're on the right. So I teach people how to not hug the right if they're actually intending to go straight.
And you also said you had this thing where you're teaching people how to keep your eyes sort of keep focused on where you're going, but be able to look backwards.
Exactly.
Now, that's a trick.
Exactly. We call that scanning.
Yeah.
And so the idea is most of us on bicycles, we don't have rear view mirrors. Or side mirrors. And so we need to actually physically be able to look and see what's behind us if we're needing to make a maneuver left or right, if we need to slow down while still maneuvering ahead. We can't be looking back the whole time. So the idea is how to keep forward momentum while looking backwards, and that's a skill that I think a lot of bicyclists would be well good to learn.
Dave, as you know, because you've been doing a lot of the reporting on this, 12 bicyclists so far this year were killed already, and there's been, I think, 360 or so in over the course of 10 years or so. I may have that a little bit wrong, but more bicyclists, there's a lot of dangerous intersections. We've got people who are helping us out and posting areas that are very, very dangerous. Does the state look at those? You know, do they sort of take note individually of these kinds of intersections and streets that are particularly dangerous?
Yeah, the state tells me at least that they're taking a closer look at roads that they are in control of, and sort of looking as they make updates to those streets to repave them or redesign them in some way to try to incorporate, to try to think about bicyclists as well as pedestrians and other kinds of road users other than cars going forward. Aside from state streets, though, it's a very local kind of decision, and you'll see things vary quite a bit from one community to another. As you cross the town line, conditions can change quite a bit. Bike lanes may cut out. Infrastructure may be kind of disconnected.
Did you do any breakdown, Steve, with men versus women in terms of their attitudes about cycling?
Yeah, truthfully though, there's a lot of sort of commonality across demographic groups. I mean, most people think the interaction between cars and bikes is unsafe. Most people think that both are to blame, and most people think that bike lanes are the best thing to do about it. I mean, there was some variation here and there. You know, we talked about the political variation, for example, but overall, there was pretty solidly, or I shouldn't say solidly shared, but pretty not a ton of variation demographically between the various demographic groups.
Where do you all stand on this integrated road use, where the cyclist becomes part of the regular traffic, like a motorcycle or any other vehicle that's hopping along? Where do you stand on that?
I think it's situational. I think in some areas it works great. For example, a lot of our neighborhood streets, mixing, you're talking about this idea of mixing, is probably the optimal solution. In other areas, which are thoroughways, where you have high speed and high throughput, there a more protected infrastructure, such as a bike lane or even more so a cycle track, I think is preferable. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution. It really, again, it's very situational.
Well, we're going to be talking about that more in our next segment. All right, Steve Koczela, Mr. Riley, and Laura Smeaton, thank you so much. All right, and as a reminder that this conversation continues as our Right of Way series continues all week, you can take our traffic poll and see how your answers compare to everyone else. That's at WGBHnews.org. Also, check out our partner website, wickedlocal.com, for coverage in your local community.